Well, thank you as always for joining us. I love and appreciate that you choose to spend your very valuable time here. And we always aim to deliver and give you lots of value. And today is going to be no exception to that. Today, you are going to have the pleasure of meeting Danielle Hendon. And we're going to be talking about negotiating how to thrive in business while balancing parenthood. It seems like a daunting task sometimes. So welcome, Danielle. It's so great to have you here.
It is so great to be here. I am so excited.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the conversation. For those of you who may not know her, Danielle is the founder and owner of Four Corners CFO. She offers financial advisory services, and she's coupled her experience in corporate finance and accounting with her passion for people to be able to bring the benefits of that big business approach and financial analysis to entrepreneurs who may be smaller, but get the benefits of that big business approach. And now, instead of helping corporations increase share price, Danielle gets to help business owners increase their personal livelihood so that they can have a legacy, a lasting impact on their community, and actually enjoy their life. So we could all use a little more of that. So why don't you kickstart us off there, Danielle? Tell us what caused you to make that leap from the corporate world where you were clearly on the fast track to success.
Yeah, I'm going to take a really big step back and give you like the whole where I started because people
Okay.
always get a kick out of where I actually started this. I went to college to be an opera major.
No.
And
Okay, that's
so
yeah.
so you'd never guess we end up in accounting. But I
Well,
had
night and day.
it is a little different, but I also think it plays into the creative aspect of being a business owner.
Yeah.
And not everybody can jump into that without thinking it through.
Yeah.
But I did. So I had a professor when I started college as a music major that made us write a paper on the future of our career path.
Yeah.
And I realized very quickly that I do not have friends in high places and I'm going to be broke and I'm not going to be able to afford myself. So I had a couple of friends that were taking accounting classes at the business school. And I was like, why not go try what they're doing? And I actually loved it. I loved
Yeah.
getting to tell a story with numbers. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I do in the
Oh.
business now. It's not my kids think we do math because I ask them all the time, I'm like, you want to take over my business one day, right? No, mom, we don't want to do math. I'm like, I don't do math, but okay. So I got my major in accounting. I did public accounting, which is what most people do when they leave
Yeah.
with an accounting degree. And I was in an accounting firm that I'm going to be honest and say I loved. There's something about just coming out of college and that hustle hard, play
Yeah.
hard mentality. Like it's a little bit
Yep.
fun, let's all be honest,
Yeah.
until it's not.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
when I started a family is when I realized, okay, this does not work with a
Yeah.
newborn at home. And I wasn't home the way I wanted to be. So I
Yeah.
left the public accounting firm and went into corporate. Being in the Houston area, that was an oil and gas company. That's where a
Yeah.
lot of my experience was before going to industry. And I'm sure many of your attorneys listening have similar stories from the law firm path of
Yeah.
you jump from the firm, then you try the industry. And again, honestly, I loved the company I was with. They were a mid-size oil and gas company that like to think of themselves as a small business. Everybody knew everybody. You walked the halls, you said hi. It was awesome. And I was
Yeah.
there for about 10 years. But they went through bankruptcy when oil prices crashed.
Uh,
And they came out the other side, and the bankers started slicing and dicing.
yeah.
And it took 2 years, but by the time the pandemic came, it was very, very clear and obvious that the doors were going to close.
Yeah.
We had gone from $1 billion business down to, I think it was 20 when I got let go.
Wow.
And I will say, for all the tragedy and trauma, and I don't want to take that away from anybody listening that came with that pandemic,
Yeah.
there was this silver lining of slowing down.
Yes.
And this, what I will admit, workaholic mom, that because when you love what you do it a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't get me wrong, I loved my kids, but I've always loved my job.
Yeah.
And you do it a lot. So I got a completely different perspective of parenting, being at home with the kids during that pandemic.
Yeah.
And I got to run them to school and get them to swim and get to know the teachers and the coaches and the other moms and
Yeah.
the friends. And I didn't want to give that up.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So the layoff gave me a very unique opportunity to sort of question the path forward.
Yeah.
And I could have jumped right back in, could have gone back downtown, could have
Yeah.
run another audit department, or I could try something different. And I could try to find a path forward that allows me to do what I love and be with the people I love.
Yeah.
And it is definitely a pillar of our business now, even for the employees that we hire on our team. A large majority are part-time because I want accountants to get to do accounting and have fun
Yeah.
and also be there for the people they care about.
Yeah. There is so much about that answer that I absolutely love. You know, when you talk about that creativity, it really struck a chord with me because I remember growing up, I loved the arts, right? I wanted to sing and dance and act, and I got encouraged, to follow that more traditional path. But it really struck a chord was on because when I litigate, I bring that creativity. I am
Mhm.
very dramatic in my arguments, right? And I tell stories. I bring my kids into the stories, right? And much to their dismay. So I totally resonate with that, the importance of bringing that creativity to other aspects, but also storytelling. I loved how you talk about storytelling with numbers because we as a species love stories. I mean, it goes
Mhm.
right back to our first days. And I just want to put a pin for our listeners out there as well, because COVID, obviously, that was just shook people to their core. And when you were open to it, there were so many potential silver linings and opportunities there. So one of the things when we talk about success, right? I'd said about you being on the path to success. Let's talk about that for a moment because I'm kind of on a mission to reframe how we define success because historically it has been that traditional business model, right? Where you go straight through and you have to make as
Yes.
much money as possible. What does success mean to you?
If you had asked me this question before the pandemic, I would have said what you just said.
Yeah.
I thought success was climbing the corporate ladder, making enough money to do the fun things in my free time and allow my family to do the fun things with their time.
Yeah.
And I would say on the other side of the pandemic and being an entrepreneur, which my husband is the entrepreneurial mind in our family. It
Yeah.
was never meant to be me, but the universe had other plans, and
Yeah.
here we are. Success for me now is being able to create that livelihood and help others do it too,
Yeah.
whether it's our clients or my staff or
Yeah.
like just enjoying life.
Yeah. Yeah. Enjoy the journey, right? We're so end destination focused that life is made up of the moments, right? Now, and tied to that, I often say that negotiating our mindset is our first and most important negotiation. So do you have any sort of mindset hacks or ideas around that you would recommend so that the entrepreneurs that you work with can show up more powerfully and get more of what they want out of life?
For the type A personality that I am, and I'm sure many of your listeners are, the biggest mindset shift I had to make, and that I honestly tell myself every day, failure is only an option if I stop trying.
Mm, yeah,
It
nice.
doesn't, it's not a failure if you're continuing to move
Yeah,
forward and try.
yeah,
Now, trying to do the same thing when it's not working
yeah, yeah,
isn't going to get you anywhere, but because it's a roller
yeah,
coaster when you enter this business owner side of things,
yeah,
and it has its ups and downs. And there are days my husband will stop me and say, I think you just created yourself another job that you could
yeah,
work. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes, but I
yeah,
have so much more fun on this side of it.
yeah. And failure, it's funny, we've been so conditioned to see it as a dirty word. I mean, most of our fears are fear of failure. And boy, have
Hmm.
I come to reframe that, right? Celebrate. A friend of mine talks about failabrations, and I embrace that term.
Yes.
I wish I could go back with the kids and sit down every night and say, tell me, when they were younger, what's something you failed at miserably today and what did you learn from it? And we celebrate it. So, because that's the only path forward, right? For growth.
Hmm.
It's so beautiful. Now, I think many business owners struggle. We talked a little bit about that balance, and certainly that was a key motivator for you getting out of that corporate stream. And I think a lot of professionals and business people struggle with that. They believe it's sort of one or the other, right? You can either have a successful business or you can be a great parent and have a full life. So, what insights do you
Hmm.
have on finding the balance?
I remember when I was in corporate, we had a women's group and they had an executive come speak, and she gave this whole speech about how it's not about finding balance in every single day. It's finding balance throughout the seasons.
Yeah,
Something always gets priority.
yeah,
It always does. But you
Yeah.
get to pick what that priority is in different seasons of life
Yeah.
and different months and different parts of the
Yeah.
year. And it may be that you find it in the day. A big part of it for me is because the reason I do this is the kids. The reason I do this is to be there for the coaching moments and the teachers and the things like that. My day cuts off at 4 o'clock. I physically go pick my kids up from school, and I'm the one. I joke with them all the time. I run them around more than I ever used to commute downtown, but
Yeah.
I'm the one that takes
That's
them to
true.
everything and asks
Yeah.
them how they did and how was your day. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't give it up for the world, as chaotic as it is, because
Yes.
it's chaos.
Yes. Yes. I remember those days. Brace yourself. Bigger kids, bigger problems. But I hear you.
Oh, but I wouldn't give it up for the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to force the balance. It's not going to happen on
Yeah.
its own. You have to set boundaries so that you can find it.
Yeah. And I like that idea about balance through the seasons and balance through whatever. And one sort of a mini epiphany for me was, we keep hearing about balance as if it's this place that you land and you find it and then you've got it. And it's like, no, balance is a verb. You are constantly balancing, right? And choosing those priorities. So I love your approach to that. Now, we talked a little bit, hinted at how that traditional sort of that more conditioned business model was based on that very competitive approach where it was, it's all about toughness. It's all about climbing up the ladder at all costs. And I have come to be a very big believer that we get way better outcomes with an approach that focuses on relationship and connection. And I'd love your thoughts on that.
100%. I'm actually part of a mastermind of women in business, and we called ourselves the Rising Tides because
Nice.
that's what it is. When you are encouraging each other, you're all lifting each other up. And by the nature of it, you're all doing better.
Absolutely.
And I just love when I came over to the small business side of things, the complete flip in mindset from hustle hard, play hard, go, go, go,
Yeah.
corporate to how can I help?
Yes. Oh, gosh, yes. And when we get away from that scarcity mindset where, oh, we can't help because we're in competition with, as opposed to the more we help each other, the more visibility, the more there is for everybody, right? It's a whole different
Absolutely.
mindset.
I just literally right before this got off a call with having an interview, and the candidate came from another accounting firm because we
Yeah.
network and talk. Like
Nice.
they were like, "Hey, do you want to talk to our second choice? She was amazing." And I was like, "Yes, yes, I do."
Yeah, that's so good. Oh my gosh. Now we've got a lot of buzz about potential recession around the corner. I mean, they're always trying to keep us in a state of fear about something, but I know
hmm
you have some tips about how to recession proof your business. What would some of those be that you can share with us here today?
They're probably not going to sound like anything anyone else would tell you because there is always going to be something going on in the market. It's
Yes.
an election year, regardless of
Yep.
who gets elected, the market is going to be in a frenzy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always mean anything for your business.
Yeah.
If you are not looking at your numbers, you don't know what it means to your
Yeah.
business. Your numbers matter more than all the noise going on around them.
Mm.
We could look at leading indicators and all the like technical economic terms all day long. But if you're just looking at your numbers and how they're progressing up or down,
Yeah.
you can tell the story of your business, and that's what matters most.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And what are some simple things that we can do? Because I've got to admit, historically, I've been terrible. Like with my law practice, certainly it was all, and even with Women on Purpose now, with the sort of, empowerment coaching business, if you will, I'm terrible at looking at my numbers. So what are some simple things we can do to make sure that we keep our businesses financially healthy?
Absolutely. I would love to tell you about the six-part framework that we go through with all of our clients. I don't care if you're just barely getting six figures
Yeah.
or you're in the multi-millions.
Yeah.
This is what works for big business, and it's what we've scaled down to work for small business.
All right.
And logistically, anybody could listen to this and apply it.
Okay. Everybody get your pens ready.
And I'm going to speak in the most non-technical way possible. And if a
Perfect.
single word comes out that you don't know, please stop me.
Okay.
So the very first step is setting the foundation, and it's looking at the financial statement that most business owners never look at. We all know the P&L. We
Yeah.
pretty much all know our revenue numbers.
Yeah.
But when's the last time you looked at your balance sheet?
Yeah. That's true.
And making sure, I hope all of your listeners have bookkeepers helping them behind the scenes, because I'm a huge fan of everybody being in their zone of genius, and no one wants to be doing bookkeeping and learning bookkeeping when that is
Sure.
not their business. So making sure the bookkeeper is reconciling those accounts. And when I say reconcile, I want people to think, and this is going to date me a little bit, it's like balancing your checkbook.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Making sure
I'm
that
with
what's
you.
in the books is in the bank, and when they're different, you know what the difference is. That's all it is. That's all the
Yeah.
reconciliation is.
Nice.
But as long as your bookkeeper is doing that for you, and they should be, then you can trust what's on your P&L.
Yeah.
If you have not had that account reconciled for 1, 2, 3, 6 months, your stuff sitting on that P&L may not be right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just setting a foundation. So once you've set that foundation, you know you've got good P&L numbers, then I want you to think about your revenue.
Yeah.
So many clients come to me and all of their revenue is sitting in a single line called sales or legal service fee,
Yeah.
and they don't know what's in it. I want you to think about what creates money in your business. What are those revenue streams? And then I want you to ask yourself, what does it cost you to provide that service?
Yeah.
Because so many service providers do not value the cost of an hour.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
understanding your revenue streams and what we call in accounting, we call it cost of goods sold. So if you ever see that on your P&L, that's that hours part I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Making sure you understand that, because when you take the two of them, then you've got your profit margin.
Yeah.
And really knowing if you are profitable based on what you're putting into it.
Yeah.
So that's our second step. The third step is looking at all those other numbers underneath that profit margin.
Yeah.
We call those operating expenses. They're all the other bills you got to pay.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure we put those bills, we call it an expense review, and we've got a freebie just for you guys that you can go look at with more detail on how to do this.
Nice.
But the expense review is going to put those costs in one of 3 buckets. You have what I call the required costs. You cannot run a business without a cell phone and internet today. You just
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
You have what I like to call the personal perks, the things your tax CPA or tax preparer has recommended that you run through the business. One of my favorite examples, my kids are on payroll. They do not add value to my business, but it is defensible. They have jobs,
Yeah.
and it helps us from a tax
Yeah.
perspective. So it's a personal perk. The very last one, if it's not required and it's not a personal perk, all of those other costs are an investment in your business.
Yeah.
And if they're an investment, then they should be returning time, money, or both
Yeah.
back to your business.
Huh.
And if they're not a good investment.
Yeah.
And if they're marketing, they may not return it right away, but you want to set a deadline and say, okay, we're going to give this 3 months. And if it's not returning, we need to find something else.
Yeah.
So really understanding what those expenses are, putting them into those categories, and asking yourself, is it truly required? So the conversation that comes up most often with clients when we go through this exercise is, we think it's required as the business owner,
Yeah.
but when you get an outside perspective asking questions, it
Yeah.
may not be. And my favorite example for attorneys, I'm a CPA. I know we have to get continuing education. I know that continuing education is required for you guys, but I also know that for both of us, we can go get the most boring, tedious education units for like $200 and have all access to everything we need.
Yeah.
It's the biggest pain in the butt, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Or you can go get 8 hours at that really cool conference and pay $1,000.
Yeah.
So your required cost is probably more like 200. And then I ask you, that $1,000 conference, what did we do with it?
Yeah.
What was the return? What did you
Yeah.
learn? What did you implement?
Yeah.
Did it make things better, faster, easier? And if it didn't, we may not want to do that $1,000 conference again, or we're going to call it a personal perk
Yeah.
because you had fun.
Yeah.
And just really understanding the difference between those so that you can make sure that the things that you're putting money into are putting back into your business.
Wow.
And then taking everything you've learned from revenue and expense and saying, okay, what does this mean for a budget?
Yeah.
How could we build out a budget? And really, I want you to think of a budget just as setting expectations. Set the expectations for your revenue and your expenses. Where do you want them to go?
Yeah.
For our clients, we go line by line and we go super detailed. But for somebody doing this on their own,
Yeah.
where do you want revenue to be at the end of the year? And what does it need to be each month to get there?
Yeah.
What are your regular recurring expenses that create what I like to call your baseline? that you've got to pay to run the business,
Yeah.
and just playing that out. Because once you have the expectation, you get into the fifth part of our framework, which is where the magic happens. It's where you tell the story. Because
Mm.
believe it or not, setting a budget is not for the purpose of hitting the budget. The goal is not to hit your budget.
Huh.
The goal is to understand why you don't.
Okay.
Figure
Nice
out why it
reframe.
came in over or under and what
Yeah.
story your numbers are telling you, so
Yeah.
that you can either adjust your budget or you can adjust your business to get back on track.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that piece, the very last one, if I haven't lost you guys yet,
Yeah.
is the one everybody comes and asks me about, because cash is king. At the end of the day, businesses don't go out of business because they didn't have a budget. They go out of business because they ran out of money.
Yeah.
And there are 3 things that your budget isn't going to show you. It's not going to show you any payments that you make on debt. So if you have a line of credit, a
Yeah.
term loan, outstanding credit cards that aren't being paid off, those don't show on your P&L.
Yeah.
They show on that balance sheet we talked about, which means they need to be in your cash flow.
Yeah.
So we create a cash flow forecast. You just use your budget and you add in the extra pieces and layer in the timing. Your credit card gets paid every 30 days on a lag. So last month's expenses, if you're like me and you throw everything on the credit card,
Yeah.
last month's expenses are going to be this month's cash.
Yeah.
And you just layer that in as a cash flow forecast, along with the debt payments that are going to show up in your bank account. What I hope is profit distributions that you're taking for yourself, and then savings for taxes, because our goal is that you're profitable. And inevitably, if you're profitable, the IRS is going to come knocking, and we don't
Yeah.
want you to be surprised. So we want you to have that money set aside for
Yeah.
taxes.
I love your framework and I love the way that you approach it, Danielle. Like normally I am just glossed over at this stage, gone. And I love when you talk about it as storytelling, in that it makes it's a more human approach to business, right? That we can all buy into, even if you're not a numbers person. That's great. Now, you probably already answered this in part, but just to put a pin in it, for our listeners, like what are some strategies that you would say? Because I know you're big about putting more profit in your pocket. So
Yep.
how do we do that?
The very first thing I would recommend to anybody that has never taken a profit distribution is to take every time you get paid, put 1% of that in a separate account. Ideally, I love when this account is out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
You're not going to mix it up with the operating funds.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about your IOLTA, please don't mess those up. But
Yeah.
when you actually earn the money and you move it,
Yeah.
then you want to pay yourself at least 1%. Just
Yeah.
set it aside. Prove to yourself that that 1% is not going to break anything.
Yeah.
And then you can start building on it and growing it,
Yeah.
because so much of money is mindset related and
Yes.
creating habits that allow
Yeah.
us to be comfortable.
Yeah. And we all have money baggage. Boy, do we bring that money baggage from our youth into
Mhm.
our business, how we show up, how we deal with it. And money just really, I love that you're talking about that, because that I find it just disappears. If you don't get really specific about it, money just has a way of disappearing. And I've had that experience recently where I'm like, what do you mean there's nothing left in that account? I haven't taken anything out. And yet it does, it disappears. Now, does that grow after time? Is the 1% sort of that threshold to get your, okay.
It
Yeah.
is. So our end goal with clients, and especially when clients come to us, they're usually doing a little bit of profit distribution.
Yeah.
But in my experience with a lot of other tax strategies and CPAs, the goal is that your payroll and your profit distribution are equal to each other. And
Yeah.
that's where we want to get.
Yeah.
So we will build on that. And
Yeah.
like you said, it's not that money disappears. What I find, especially with women in business,
Yeah.
we will take care of everything else first.
That is
And
true.
there's nothing left for us.
That is so true. Yes, thank you for calling that out, because that is a hard truth that we do not face.
And we do it everywhere in life,
Yes.
right? I mean, I just admitted to taxing my kids more than I commuted downtown. We take
Yeah,
care of everything else in business,
yeah,
and there's nothing left for you. So
yeah,
you have to practice. And I've done this with so many women in business when they come
yeah,
to us. You have to practice prioritizing yourself.
yeah. And not just financially. I mean, I love that you said that. And I think that's a really important point. And again, for our listeners, both financially, make sure you're taking care of yourself and not just everything and everyone else, but in terms of your time. You
Yes.
deserve set time aside for yourself to do the things that you love in life. What is that big vision that you have down the road? And be plotting out steps to make sure that you're actually getting there, not making it a one day, when the kids are in school, when the kids are out of school, when I get this one more degree, when I do this, when I do this. Start
Yep.
living today. I love that.
Absolutely. And it works in the business too. I've seen so many, because I can relate so much to the attorney side of it, being a practicer of my profession,
Yeah.
you end up doing the business as
Yeah.
much as you work on the
Yeah.
business, and then you're not growing what you really wanted.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, so true. And no wonder we get exhausted, right? At some point you lose the passion. There's no you're not
It's
living it
too
as
many hats.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what are three, and thank you so much for giving value. Some people come and just plug, like you are giving us some concrete takeaway steps here. So again, for our listeners, I hope you are taking notes. And if you haven't been, re-listen to the episode because I know I'm going to be printing off a transcript of this and making myself a plan. So what are three non-negotiable habits that you're committed to, Danielle? And I'm talking this, it doesn't even have to be about financial or the business, just those maybe even lifetime habits. Do you have some non-negotiable habits in your life?
So the first one I don't think is a habit so much as a value and motto is family first.
Oh,
If something comes up and there's a decision to be made, my family always comes first. And I say it to our team, I say it to my clients.
yeah,
They know that like if my kid's homesick, you're going to get an email that my kid's homesick.
yeah,
And that is a non-negotiable for me.
yeah,
It's the same that we cut the business day off at 4 o'clock
yeah,
because it's family first.
yes,
And I would say the second one for me, the habit that is most successful for my type A personality is time blocking. Because
yes,
if I do not block it on my calendar, I live and die by that calendar.
yeah,
And if I can time block it and remind myself to focus on the thing I
yes,
said I would focus on, then it's going to get done.
yeah,
Otherwise, you end up full of meetings and all these other things, basically stealing the time away because you
absolutely.
haven't blocked it off. Let's
Nice.
think. The third habit that prioritizing yourself, and I know we've talked about that so much, but it
Yeah,
really is and it time blocking is part of it for
yeah,
me. It's finding that time to get on the Peloton,
yeah,
to call a
yeah,
friend. That is, as we've grown into this remote world of Zoom
yes,
calls and all of these things, we don't have that same water
yes,
cooler
yeah,
interaction that you get in the office.
yeah.
So I will literally time block and be like, okay, Marco Polo, your friend. Because if I don't, you lose that connection and that
Yeah.
connectivity, and it can
Yeah.
get very lonely very fast.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to build business, actually. It's surprising how sometimes just those networks that having that human connection and relationship building that ends up paying off dividends in unexpected ways. And I'm really glad that you sort of tied those two together as well, Danielle, about the blocking time and included in that block off time for yourself, the thing we
Mhm.
were just talking about. What is that big vision thing for you? Maybe you want to write the great, American novel down the road or whatever it is. So it's not gonna magically happen one day. You gotta start blocking that time
Mhm.
for it now. And also going back to the first point that you made, I thought was so great about that family first principle. Because if we don't have strong boundaries about whether that's your principle or something else, the rest of the world will impinge, and clients
Mhm.
often won't necessarily respect boundaries unless you set it. And it struck me when, my firstborn got diagnosed at 2 months with a serious heart defect and
Mm.
needed open heart surgery. And anyhow, a long story, everything that could go wrong did. We spent 3 months in critical care at the hospital. And for me, like, obviously everything stopped, right? Just that was
Yeah.
it. I was there. Like, I lived at the hospital for 3 months. I slept on the floor sometimes. And it amazed me. I mean, most were good, but then you had those clients who were pushing, 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 trying. And it's like, wow. So that was an eye opener for me in terms of how important it is. I've got to be the one to set those boundaries and set that as an absolute, unshakable, non negotiable priority. So I love that you gave that reminder to our listeners here. And I can't believe how quick our time has gone. I could talk to you all day. You have given us so much value in such a short time. And I normally like to end by asking, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life? Again, doesn't have to be about this at all. One of those aha moments when you see something differently, think about it differently.
It really is that just keep going kind of mindset. Like, I never fathomed being on the path I'm on now.
Yeah.
It was not in my wildest dreams to own a business.
Yeah.
Never, ever thought we'd be here.
Yeah.
And I am just having the most fun
Yeah.
ever. Like I wouldn't give it up for the world. There is zero chance I'm going back to
Yeah.
corporate.
And you know what I see as you were saying that, a little corollary to that is because definitely just keep going. Dora, I love that from Finding Nemo. So good. But also being open for opportunity. Like you said, I never
Mhm.
fathomed this. And sometimes it's just open up, take the blinders off to that path that we're so conditioned to follow up, and allow yourself to be open to the fact that there may be better opportunities out there. Not only opportunities in life, even in individual negotiations, I find when we get so attached to one outcome, we miss much better outcomes sitting right there on the table before us.
Yes.
Yeah, so beautiful. Danielle, this has been a lovely conversation with some really great value, and kudos to you. What a great modeling you give for us in terms of how to live a great life while having a great business. Where can people learn more about you?
The best way to connect with me is LinkedIn. I am also on Instagram under Four Corners CFO, but LinkedIn is actually under my name. It's Danielle Hendon, and that's where we do most of our social media along with our website. So we are going to have a landing page just for you guys. It'll be the number 4cornerscfo.com/Cindy Watson. And that's where you can go grab that expense review if you really want it.
That's fantastic. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes for our listeners. So don't panic if you didn't catch that right away. I encourage you to re-listen to this episode, but if not, you can just check out the show notes and we'll make sure to include that link for you. And do take advantage when people offer these little perks. So often we get caught up in our busy life and we don't take advantage. So make a point of doing that. And again, Danielle, it's been a pleasure having you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Cindy.
And for our listeners, I have no doubt there was just so much value here. I hope you really were paying attention to be able to grab some of these golden nuggets out of here that you can apply in your life and your business to sort of up level your experience of life. Make sure to give the gift of sharing. Share this episode with other people that could benefit, which is just about anybody. Even if your friends aren't entrepreneurs, there are lots of little nuggets here that would apply in, I think, every area of your life. And before we sign off today, I just wanted to share some ways that we can work together if you are looking to practice law with greater purpose or to improve your firm's culture and productivity. I've got everything from group to my signature one-on-one programs and experiences available to help you better leverage your innate power and that of your team to be able to get more of what you want and deserve in life. And that is a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth and find ways that you can practice on purpose. Find a better way to practice law so you can rekindle your passion and make a difference in the world, negotiating your best life on your terms. Until next time, take care.